Let us explore modern science versus ancient spirituality, stress relief. Together as a team, let us relaxingly recite. Contrary to the ravings of 1001 self-help gurus, personal coaches, and con men, the experience of stress is not an indictment. Ask an evolutionary biologist, and they'll tell you there are stressors. Some are circumstantial, some are physical, some are interpersonal, and some are mental. No, stress, or dukkha, is not the smoking gun, proving that we believe in a permanent or independent self, that we are arrogant, cowardly, or faithless. Our visceral response to stress evolved as an evolutionary mechanism in response to peril, in order to keep us alive. To paraphrase Doctor of Philosophy Neil deGrasse Tyson, it could feel like the universe is trying to kill us. And biology has evolved mechanisms to respond to the danger appropriately. For life forms born without a stress response typically did not live long enough to reproduce and pass on their genetic traits. No sentient being is a stranger to the stressors of not getting what we want when we want it, not keeping what we like for as long as we please, and enduring that which we do not want. Birth is stressful, illness is stressful, even dying is stressful. Since stress, from the petty to the existential, is more of a rule than an exception, the wise develop strategies to deal with it. This is where the Buddha taught mindfulness and meditation. Having completed our opening lesson, let's shift gears. It is Yoda Monday morning. Come, let us meditate like a Jedi. After approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I have harnessed my autistic special interests and my ADHD hyperfixation or hyperfocus to spend about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each school of meditation so that I could become your nerdy, neurodivergent guide to nirvana. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. So now we're going to shift gears yet again and turn our attention to the latest iteration of easy quartered meditation. Please relaxingly recite with me. Whatever comes, may all beings notice, relax, and flow. Whatever stays, may all beings notice, relax, and flow. Whatever goes, may all beings notice, relax, and flow. We turn our attention now to the first of 4 mindful crease counting meditations. When upon the tip of our left little finger We rest the great knuckle of our right little finger, palms up, in our lap. We gently invite our real or imagined subtle energies to automatically coalesce in the bladder region of our lower abdomen. Good morning, Shibi. Each time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we have evolved to access the sympathetic nervous system ensconced within the middle third of our spinal cord. This parasympathetic nervous system has evolved to help us to notice in a very special way, to help us notice vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly. What is the most efficient way to practice mindfulness? To silently and mentally recite the three-syllable verb noticing during each inhalation. Similarly, the most efficient way to practice meditation is to silently and mentally recite the three-syllable verb relaxing during each exhalation. As together we practice, remember, the moment you have a specific question about Buddhist recitation, Buddhist meditation, or Buddhist philosophy, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window. Let us chant an excerpt. Oopsie. Well, I'm having some troubles here. From the vast expanse of the diamond-like mind, composed in the 7th century by Prahevajra, translated from the Tibetan by Chokyo Namkai Norbu, translated from the Italian by Adriano Clemente, adapted and amplified by yours truly. This vast expanse of our diamond-strung mind is the ever-good and spacious ultimate dimension of phenomena. This pure, complete path that liberates all does not arise, cease, or actively analyze anything. Having some coordination challenges. What gives our mind great strength? Training in mindfulness and meditation. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during our previous inhalation, whether that which we noticed was a scent, flavor, sensation, sound, or sight, it is as non-graspable as a vast, empty expanse. Like the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which although could be tantalizing to the eye, is non-graspable to the hand. This vast expanse of our diamond-strung mind is the ever-good and spacious ultimate dimension of phenomena. This pure, complete path that liberates all does not arise, cease, or actively analyze anything. The Buddhist path of enlightenment is paved with neither concentration nor contemplation, focus nor analysis. Consequently, as we relax into our exhalation, that which we noticed during our previous inhalation could feel as if it was as non-graspable as if it had never been born. It can feel as non-graspable as if it simply ceased to exist. This vast expanse of our diamond-strung mind is the ever-good and spacious ultimate dimension of phenomena. Whatever ticking time bomb of hate or rapaciousness or despair is diffused by relaxing into our exhalation. Maybe not the first breath, but over 5 or 15 or 30 minutes. This pure, complete path that liberates all does not arise, cease, or actively analyze anything. Together, let us relaxingly recite. This vast expanse of our diamond-strong mind is the ever-good and spacious ultimate dimension of phenomena. This pure, complete path that liberates all does not arise, cease, or actively analyze anything. One moment, if you please. Welcome to the second of 4 mindful crease counting meditations. When we rest the tip of our left ring finger, let's try this again. When upon the tip of our left ring finger, we rest the great knuckle at the base of our right ring finger, palms up in our lap. We gently invite our real or imagined subtle energies to automatically coalesce at the navel region of our mid-abdomen. The most efficient way to practice mindfulness is to silently and mentally recite the 3-syllable verb noticing during each inhalation. For during each inhalation, we are already wired to notice, vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly. We're wired to notice perceptions, emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. The most efficient way to practice meditation is to silently and mentally recite the 3-syllable verb relaxing during each exhalation. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist recitation, Buddhist meditation, or Buddhist philosophy, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window. Let's practice. Good morning. Um, let's relaxingly recite the following passage 4 times. Being love, and thus thoroughly accomplished, it does not contrive a practice of great compassion. Being great, the profound qualities of greatness need not be praised. This passage is rather cryptically trying to express that there are several fringe benefits to regularly relying upon our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems to practice mindfulness and meditation. First, we calm the amygdala, which is the seat of anxiety and aggression. Now, I think if I was really clever, oh, never mind. Second, we stimulate the anterior cingulate gyrus, which functions as the hub of our mirror neurons, the seat of empathy, which itself is the root of compassion and love. Now, Sturgeon's law reminds us that 90% of everything sucks. Most of us were raised in cultures or countries that sought to indoctrinate us to be rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. Some of us had the good fortune to wake up from that and realize there's probably a better way. And so a minority, maybe 10% of us strive instead to be flexible, loving, rational, laid back, lucid, egalitarian, cooperative, and kind. So these folks who are controlling and are rigid typically think it's a splendid idea to practice the rigidity of focus and the controlling tendencies of analysis. Doing so tends to exhaust the prefrontal cortex and trigger the amygdala, which, as we mentioned, is the seat of anxiety and aggression. When these people notice that despite the great time they spend in concentration and contemplation, they're getting more and more cranky, they just double down and they start concentrating on compassion or love, and they start analyzing compassion or love. But that further exhausts their prefrontal cortex and further triggers their amygdala. This is why the late Tugul Tundup insisted that the highest love was the spontaneous and uncontrived fringe benefit of cooperating with our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems to practice mindfulness and meditation. Approximately, let's see, we live in the 21st century. So approximately 14 centuries ago, the great Buddhist reformer Vajra taught the same thing. Let's continue. Being love, and thus thoroughly accomplished, it does not contrive a practice of great compassion. Being great, the profound qualities of greatness need not be praised. Some people honestly believe that if they just worship the idea of compassion and recite sentimental poems extolling the majesty of selflessness, And if they just cry enough tears, they will become compassionate. It doesn't have to be forced. We're already wired to practice mindfulness during each inhalation. We're already wired to practice meditation during each exhalation. And why sit once every 12 hours or so formally? Because doing so, especially when we blend it with the silent mental recitation of the verbs noticing and relaxing, interrupts the habit of our prefrontal cortex to compete against our sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous systems. And instead it sets space for our autonomic nervous system at last to cooperate with our cerebral cortex. Let's continue. Being loved and thus thoroughly accomplished, it does not contrive a practice of great compassion. Being great, the profound qualities of greatness need not be praised. Being loved and thus thoroughly accomplished, it does not contrive a practice of great compassion. Being great, the profound qualities of greatness need not be praised. When upon the tip of our left middle finger, we rest the great knuckle at the base of our right middle finger, palms up in our lap. We gently invite our real or imagined subtle energies to automatically coalesce at the heart region of our chest. Welcome to the final recitation of this morning's live stream. Let's together as a team let us relaxingly recite. Phenomena do not move the authentic condition, which is liberation, because it liberates without action. Since self-originated wisdom is beyond active searching and liberating itself, it also demonstrates the path of liberation. Okay, there's a lot of words here that don't seem to make a lot of sense. What do we mean by liberation? Liberation is one of the many synonyms for enlightenment. Some would say, no, there's enlightenment and there's liberation, there's two different things. But that reminds me of something Einstein once quipped, that any educated fool can make things more complicated, more difficult, and more violent. But that it takes a lot of courage and a little bit of genius to move in the opposite direction. Excuse me. In the second to the last passage of the middling discourse on the four bases of mindfulness, the Buddha allegedly taught that full enlightenment could be mastered in as little as 7 days. So, yeah, it's an easy path. It's a simple path, despite the ravings of elitists. So liberation doesn't mean we are liberated from the presence of our survival impulses, the tyranny of our amygdala and whatnot, to flee or fight, to shove or reach. For we need that to survive. That's why it evolved. The liberation the Buddha offers us is not liberation from the presence of our survival mechanisms, but from their tyranny. For we have more than just one reward system in our underbrain. We have two. One that rewards with short-term pleasure, the dopamine system, and one that rewards with long-term fulfillment, the oxytocin system. And the more we are led by that second system, by the system that cooperates as opposed to competes, the more fulfilling and rich and sweet our life is. So that's the liberation the Buddha offers it. Now, it's important to remember here that enlightenment is simply the mastery of the Eightfold Path. It doesn't mean we're perfect. It doesn't mean we have forsaken the seventh fold of the Eightfold Path, which is mindfulness. This is important. That means we still perceive things. We perceive both the fragrant and the foul. We perceive both the delicious and the disgusting. We perceive both the painful and the pleasurable. We perceive both the discordant and harmonious. We perceive both the beautiful and the ugly. We perceive the entire spectrum of human emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. From the external to the internal, from the physical to the mental, from the pleasurable to the painful, from the interesting to the boring, from the glorious to the grotesque. So don't let someone tell you that a Buddha would never feel a certain way or think a certain thing. Buddhas are just people like you and I who got really good, so good at mindfulness and meditation that they're able to practice it spontaneously, habitually, easily, and effectively. That type of habit doesn't take long to install if we practice it rationally. So liberation without action can also be described by the Taoists as wu wei, or not doing. And what that simply means is that we do not practice the Eightfold Path out of contrivance or out of scatteredness. Our spontaneity is not scattered. Instead, our spontaneity is centered. And an intelligent question would be, well, great, how do I access centered spontaneity? And here's the irony. The more we cooperate with our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, silently and mentally reciting the verbs, noticing and relaxing during each inhalation and exhalation, maybe just once every 12 hours or so, the more we do that, the more we will flow effortlessly from centered spontaneity. Together. Phenomena do not move the authentic condition, which is liberation, because it liberates without action. The liberation we desire is nothing weird and contrived that we have to force our central nervous system to comply with, like the Borg commanding comply. No. No nanites are required. Oh, my fellow sci-fi geeks. Everybody who has a sympathetic nervous system can practice mindfulness. Everybody who has a parasympathetic nervous system can practice meditation. Everybody who has a structure known as the anterior cingulate gyrus, unless you're a psychopath, you most likely do, is wired to practice empathy. This mindfulness, meditation, and empathy is our authentic condition. All we need to do is stop getting in our own way. Let's continue. Since self-originated wisdom is beyond active searching and liberating itself, it also demonstrates the path of liberation. So we do not need to squander our time and energy with the follies of focus or analysis. We just give ourselves to do the scary thing, which is to notice during each inhalation, vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly. Movies, TVs tell us that the big strong guy bristling with weapons and muscles is the brave one. The Buddha teaches us the vulnerable one is even braver, hiding behind nothing, vulnerable to the kindness and the cruelty of the world. In liberating itself, it also demonstrates the path of liberation. Good news, we don't need to wake up early on a Saturday morning, knock on strangers' door, and strive to coerce them to come to some sort of a religious meeting. The more we flow from centered spontaneity because of our authentic practice of mindfulness and meditation, the more this path of mindfulness and meditation and its benefits become self-evident. We don't need to advertise. We don't need to buy a billboard and say, oh, look at here. Behold my awesomeness. That is entirely not required. Together. Phenomena do not move the authentic condition, which is liberation, because it liberates without action. We are already wired to master the Buddha's path. All we got to do is get out of our own way. There's no sight so ugly or emotion so ugly. There's no sound so discordant or intention so discordant. There is no scent so foul or thought so foul. There is no flavor so disgusting or memory so disgusting. There is no sensation so painful or imagining so painful as to make enlightenment impossible. We can feel, we can endure, just like Hamlet wrote, I'm not sorry, just like Shakespeare wrote in Hamlet, we can endure the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune and still master the path, still find a crumb of peace in a hurricane. Let's continue. Since self-originating wisdom is beyond active searching and liberating itself, it also demonstrates the path of liberation. Phenomena do not move the authentic condition, which is liberation, because it liberates without action. Since self-originated wisdom is beyond active searching and liberating itself, it also demonstrates the path of liberation. This is kind of fun, isn't it? There's something to look forward to for tonight's class. Upon the tip of our left index finger, we could rest the great knuckle of our right index finger, palms up in our lap. Doing so could gently invite our real or imagined subtle energies to automatically coalesce at the crown region of our head. You have taken your first step into a much larger world. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 9 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's evening meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.